we'll start with what do we call it? We'll start with a roll call.
Director Anderson? Director Daniels? Here. Director Lindor? Director Lindor, you have yourself on mute. We're doing roll call.
Sorry, here.
Director Paul?
Here, remotely.
Vice Chair Oglesby?
Here.
Chair Riley?
Here.
And Director Edwards is en route.
Okay, we'll recognize him when he arrives. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. My lead. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oral communications in the audience and also those that may be online wishing to address the board on any item that's not listed on the agenda. You'll have 3 minutes. So anybody in the public here? Hi, Tom.
Sorry, I missed your meeting last.
Oops.
Sorry, I missed the meeting in May, but I was in Hawaii on Oahu, and water. They're actually, the groundwater was almost totally contaminated by overflow from the underground fuel storage at Pearl Harbor. And I was surprised to see that they are going to actually build a desal plant at Barbers Point, $2 billion. And I can't remember what the capacity of it is, but it came out in a headline. And this is very surprising because they have tremendous groundwater underneath all the volcanic areas that where it traps it. But I guess they're scared that potential contamination, what have you, screwing up their water supply. So there's no such thing as a sure thing. And when I think that we're getting 2/3 of our water out of the Seaside Basin, that worries me. And I'm just hoping that we don't have the same screw up like we had, 4 years ago, when a valve failed and we had, we pumped sewage into the bay and we wound up getting fined big time. So water, it's a problem everywhere. And even people that don't have problems with amount of water can have problems with contamination. So I think of this with 2/3 banking on the Seaside Basin. It still worries me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from here? Anybody with their hands raised?
Yes, Chair Riley, we have Melody Crislock.
Melody Crislock. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm not worried. I am impressed by the amazing job that MPWMD and Monterey One have done to provide us a water supply that is sound. In going through all the CPUC filings, it's amazing how much water we've really got. I am totally impressed. What a visionary thing you guys have done. You can spout all the fear you want, but, Riley, but it's not true. This is not contaminated. We're good. We have 3 different water sources. We've got the river, we've got the groundwater, we've got ASR, and we got Pure Water Monterey. We've got actually 4 water sources. So I think it's time for you guys to start making it clear to the public that we have got a lot of water here and that the only thing standing in the way is Cal-Am doesn't want to lift that CDO, because the minute they do, it proves that we don't need a desal plant. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to comment? Karen, I see your hand up, but I don't know if you're.
Yes.
I don't want to call on you yet. Let's get to public first.
Chair Riley, there are no other raised hands.
Okay, recognize Karen.
I just raised my hand because for the record, I wanted to let my fellow board members know that the reason I'm participating remotely tonight is because I have a family member who's sick and I need to stay with him. So just for the record, that's the reason. Thank you for allowing it.
Well, thanks for being in the quorum. No other speakers for oral communications, so we'll come back to the board. Next agenda item is the consent calendar. Is there any comment or any item that any member wants to pull? If not, we can entertain a motion to accept the full consent calendar.
I move acceptance of the consent calendar, Chair.
Second.
Moved in second, roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Aye.
Chair Riley.
All right,
Consent calendar is adopted 7-0.
thank you. GM, your turn.
Well, it's the dog days of summer from about to be, so not much to report the sales report. And I want to preface this by saying that this report will change after this water year is over. We've been doing this method of reporting on compliance for over 20 years. Kind of unchanging. You'll see during the ASR injection season, we had charts on that, and after the water year is over, we'll add some charts on how we ended up supply and demand, but it's not really compliance reporting anymore, and we hope it won't be. CEO can be lifted. So it'll morph into something more as a monthly report on supply and demand. But for now, let's go ahead with the same report. So looking at the Monterey Peninsula Water Resource System, which is the river and seaside groundwater basin, a couple of things to note. Through the end of May is 8 months, so 2/3 of a year, of a water year. And the Carmel River actual is just under 2/3 of the total Carmel River right, which is 3,376. So demonstrates that there's at least making a reasonable effort to keep up the river.
Yeah.
Same thing on the
Yeah.
seaside groundwater basin. We're almost exactly at 2/3 of the adjudicated right of 1,474 acre feet. So those are positive signals. Next slide.
Good. Gotcha.
Happened.
Yeah.
Need participants. Takeaway on this one, Pure Water Monterey recovery at 2,238 acre feet. During that same time period, we delivered 2,605. So that means there's about 376 acre feet in the ground, which is a little unusual. Typically, Caling tries to balance what they purchase, what goes in with what comes out within a month. And so they're lagging a little bit on the withdrawal. Doesn't affect us. We've already sold the water. So it's just sitting there waiting. And then the other is that Sand City did have a productive month last month with 19 acre feet, which is pretty good for that plant. The next one is our proxy for customer demand. This is all the sources that went into the distribution system to serve customers. And the takeaway from that is we're still about 200 acre feet higher than last year, which, is a byproduct of prior year with irrigation demands, some significant leaks. You may remember the large scale leak into Lake El Estero from
whatever the road is there that my brain's gonna put right by Aguadito, and things like that. So it's not an indication that we're back on an upswing. We always have a plan for variances of 100 or 200 feet. We should end up the year roughly around 9,100. And then rainfall, there's nothing to say. Except that our gauge actually picked up a little bit of rain, like 0.11 inches in May. But we're still going to finish the year below normal, and the same thing with unimpaired rainfall. So the last two charts, but I know you have this one. And that concludes general manager's presentation. As far as item 10 in the water supply projects, there are no reportable events to consider the delaying of the Pure Water Monterey expansion. So as of right now, it's still on budget in October. And we'll keep posted because obviously we'll figure out another way to celebrate that project for maybe the 6th or 7th celebration. There'll be a ribbon cutting at some point.
Yes, comments from the board?
Yeah, thank you. It would be nice to see something out there. Unless we can go out there, and I can't go out there right now.
Not right now, but we can get you out there.
But it'd be nice for the public to see the project moving along. Are they putting in equipment yet or whatever, you know, it's nice to hear that it's going good, but seeing is believing.
Yeah,
So
we should have brought some photographs.
yeah, I appreciate that. In the future, I know we got an AGM from over there. Maybe you can call over there and get something put together for us so the public can see that that project is moving along. Because I hate for August to come up and say, well, you know.
Which is possible, trust me.
Well,
You know how
I'm saying
construction
this
works.
now. Show me something now so I can feel a little happy about it. Thank you.
Should note that our AGM took a member of Senator Schiff's staff out to the plant on Tuesday of last week, gave him a tour. So we're kind of giving the new senator a flavor of the Central Coast and all the things that we do. So
Good to hear. Good to hear, yes.
Thank you. Although I'm not confused anymore, I get it now. ASR recovery is water that's taken out of the ground for use in the system. So we haven't used any, but I do think it creates some confusion. Is there anywhere that we're putting, because production is the confusing word,
Yep.
the ASR that has been produced over this period of time?
right, yeah, which you don't see unless you go into the footnotes. Yes, and so the footnote 4 on both pages with the sources do show what was produced.
Okay.
But that's actually one of the reasons I've said that this is, it needs an evolution, because it'd be nice to report on a regular basis how much water we have in storage, which it's not just ASR, it's the Pure Water Monterey Operating Reserve. And, you know, we've been out there in the public saying, you know, we've got almost 70% of a normal year sitting in storage, which you wouldn't use up in one drought year, but that's your buffer for, you could handle 2 to 3 drought years in a row. So there are
almost
things
like
that we should be reporting.
doing a budget. So 716 and 182, what does that mean? Why is it two separate numbers?
Right, so the 182 is what we call table 13 water rights. So when it rains, there's this seasonal water right that lasts from December through May.
Mhm.
Cal-Am is the water right holder, but they're able to say, oh, that water came under that water right, which leaves more room under their 3376 water right, which is a different water right. So it just,
Got it.
it's only there in the wet years.
And then for CDO tracking purposes, ASR production for injection is capped at 600 acre feet per year. What does that mean?
It's a vestige that's probably best crossed off at this point.
Okay.
Because when CalAm reports its annual report and its quarterly reports to the state for compliance with the cease and desist order,
Mm-hmm.
at one point the state was saying, hey, everything, the Eastwood well, which is Malpaso, the Carmel River water right, Table 13, and frankly, injection, it's all coming from the Carmel River. We're going to lump it all together. And we said, whoa, hold on. You know, we're reaching a point now where we don't even need ASR in the same year. They said, okay, well, fine, count the first 600 as if it's a withdrawal from the river like the others. But that counting has gone away for the last 2-3 years at this point.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Chair Riley, we do have Michael Bear with his hand raised.
Okay, we'll just go out to the public. Starting with Michael and then by inside here.
I just couldn't hear Dave Stolt when he gave his report. The volume was bad, and that's what there's no way for me to let you know. But it's better now. But maybe Dave could get the mic a little closer to his face. I can hear him better now. Sorry.
yeah, that's because I have the Michael Bear button and I hadn't pressed it.
Oh, okay. Well, I like to know what's going on, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was a technical question. Any, I'm out to the public now, so anyone in the public who wants to comment on
I see no raised
this
hands.
this item. Okay, does that conclude your report? No, that's just item 9 you were reporting on.
Well, we talked about item 10 as well. So we're
We
good.
did, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so moving along, unless there are any other questions from the board or comments. Okay, item number 11, report from the district council.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, members of the public. This is going to be a short report as well.
Yes.
Last month, I promised that the report on the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association cases would come back one last time, and we're able to fulfill that promise. The court has canceled its case management conferences on this. These cases are in the final steps of settlement, but the full settlement is at hand. The district has agreed to create a settlement fund of $3,350,000 from the supply charge proceeds, and that's used to pay attorney's fees, administrative costs, and then the remainder is to be paid to ratepayers, and refund checks will be issued. Those who receive refund checks will have 1 year from the date of issuance to cash them. If they're not cashed, then those monies will be paid to the United Way for to pay for ratepayers facing impending water shutoffs due to non-payment. No portion of the net settlement funds are reverted to the district. The final aspect of the settlement is that the district will forbear until June of next year from imposing or creating any new Prop 218 fees or charges that did not exist previously.
A question on that with the United Way, did they have a fund or a process already set up for this?
Yes, they
You
do.
just merged with it?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
This is not a new fund. United Way is already administering it. These are monies that just go into that.
Thank you.
So this will be the last time, and this is 5 cases that roll off your books here. Looking at the next case that we're referencing, and that's the district's effort to fulfill the mandate of Measure J to acquire ownership and operation of CalAm. We did have a case management conference before Judge Rivamonte, and he certainly seems to have a handle as to the case and where it's going. Feel very comfortable with him as the presiding judge in the matter. As we reported last time, the town of Apple Valley case has been accepted by the Supreme Court for review. And so that is in progress. Because the ruling in that case may have an effect on this matter of the district's acquisition of Cal-Am, Cal-Am has stated that it does intend to seek a stay of proceedings in the Superior Court until after the decision in Apple Valley. How much of a stay, it's unknown. Whether it's going to be a full stay or just a partial stay, we're not certain. We have discovery requests outstanding, and there are more discovery requests that can and should be made from our perspective. Cal-Am has said that they were going to be filing a motion for the stay. We just have not seen that yet. They promised that this was to come forward originally in May, but we're anticipating that any day that motion to stay the proceedings in full or in part will land. We've also discussed with Cal-Am their plan to file motions for summary judgment to have the court rule as a matter of law as to the scope of these proceedings. We have not yet seen that. If and when that summary judgment motion is filed, then the district would also plan to file a counter motion for summary adjudication so that we can have our story be fully told. Depending on when the motions are filed, we will then know more about when a hearing date on those motions would arise. It's likely that they'll be held later this year, but we just don't have a date. But I would anticipate that we'll have a schedule to report to you on those at your July meeting.
So, I hate to say this, but what if we flip the coin on that and we file these motions so we can get this thing moving?
I believe that's an academic question now. We've been in discussions with Cal-Am in terms of their timing. Just because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And we've been discussing on our side what our motion is going to look like. So if Cal-Am absolutely did nothing, we would be able to do that ourselves.
Is it a time? We're gonna wait a year? We're gonna wait?
No, sir. No. I believe that by the time we are next before you to discuss this case, both Cal-Am's motion and the district's response will be on file.
All right, I'll see you in July. Just letting you know.
Or close to it. I'm actually going to miss your July meeting. But others will be here to report.
All right, sir. Thank you.
A quick update on the.
Just a question about
I'm
this
sorry.
one.
Yes.
If you could just take me through the question that the state Supreme Court is trying to resolve and help me understand what is the proper standard of judicial review for the trial court to apply to determine whether the property owner has rebutted the presumptions under Code of Civil Procedure, sections 1245, subdivision and X.
Okay,
I just want the second part of that. What does that mean?
Okay. There is existing appellate law that has an independent review standard by the court on cases of this type. The town of Apple Valley, the court adopted a different standard, and that was an abuse of discretion standard. And in this case, it's the district that made the first set of determinations in our resolution of necessity. So the question is, when there's a challenge to the resolution, to the findings and conclusions, what deference, if any, should be given to the agency's findings?
Ours. Districts. Got it.
The standard of law, and we don't think it was well reasoned, that the standard of law was that it was a de novo review, not a deferential review. An abuse of discretion review, we do believe, is the proper standard. That's the standard that town of Apple Valley used. The utility district has appealed that, and we believe that the deferential standard is the appropriate one.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So there's a lot at stake there.
Yeah.
And I believe the time will come once the appellate briefs are drafted and submitted. There'll time to a time to come to file amicus briefs as well. And I believe we should, to make it clear how the town of Apple Valley applies in this instance. And there's a key difference in our case because we tie back to the voters' initiative. We are doing what the voters told us to do. Town of Apple Valley, the decision makers decided that it was a good thing to do, and they did it on behalf of the voters, but not because the voters said, if feasible, do it. So we need to educate the Supreme Court of the circumstances that apply here.
Thank you.
Okay. Going to the LAFCO case, the district did challenge the LAFCO's decisions concerning the exercise of the district's powers to acquire CalAm. The district did prevail at the trial court level. CalAm and LAFCO did appeal that, and they have now filed their brief. We are on the clock for our opening brief. Our opening brief is due on August 11. Once we will have the ability to extend that time. CalAm and LAFCO sought several extensions of their time. We want to make sure that we get it right. So my apologies to Mr. Edwards if in fact we're going to be seeking an extension, but I think this is an instance where it's better to get it right than get it fast. We'll be reporting to you on that probably in August, but not in July. The next case is the challenge of the Coastal Commission and the Coastal Development Permit for CalAm's desal plant. We know that the trial court did rule in favor of the Coastal Commission and CalAm and adverse to the petitioning parties. So we are now, and the notice of entry of judgment was just entered in on June 2nd. That starts the timeline to file a notice of appeal. We are in discussion with the other petitioning parties as to whether or not an appeal is appropriate. We are identifying proposed appellate counsel that would act in the lead. Just this afternoon, I had a discussion with other petitioners in terms of the timing and identifying key issues that we believe have a reasonable chance of success if an appeal is to be filed. And I believe the answer is going to be there are issues that are worthy of being pursued, but we will be reporting to you in a closed session to come to provide you with the background and to seek direction as to whether an appeal should be filed. The next item is the matters before the Public Utilities Commission. In the CalAm's amended water purchase agreement, we're talking about the phase 2, the supply and demand phase. A proposed decision was circulated in early May. That's been under review. The matter was set last week to come to the Public Utilities Commission. Their process is it was to have been on the consent calendar, but it did not stay on the consent calendar. One of the commissioners' offices did pull the matter for review. We are anticipating that there will be a second proposed decision for consideration. We have not seen that. They've reopened the public discussion period that commissioners have with parties. Some parties have elected to do that. We have not. Our perspective is that everything that could be said has been said, and that we will be making comments if and when a new proposed decision is available. The one thing that the commission did do, by statute, they had until June 30th to come up with a final review of this case, and the commission on the consent calendar did continue that deadline to October 31st. So it bought them more time.
Is there just a couple sentences of what the proposed decision was?
We did provide
Was that one of the emails we
yeah,
got?
yeah,
Okay,
yes.
I can look for it.
Yeah, and it was just simply the way these decisions are written, and there's dicta, there's narrative talking about the process, what was raised in the process, then it gets to findings of law, conclusions of law, and then based on the findings, here's the order. The thrust of the order was to determine a reasonable level of what the Public Utilities Commission thinks is a reasonable level of demand in the year 2050 and a reasonable level of available supplies in 2050, as well as today.
Yeah.
So
I have to admit, I was disappointed in the decision that they took a year to draft this, and it's sloppy. They transposed numbers and it several times. It's sloppy. They relied on a decision that they made in 2018 on
This was, we
supply.
discussed in the last meeting, actually,
That-
now that I'm
yeah,
remembering this.
yes.
We've had this conversation.
Yes.
You've got to excuse me. I'm so sorry. It's all coming back to me
That's
now.
Uh,
Now I'm remembering.
No excuses, but this can be mind numbing.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
CalAm's general rate case for that if they filed in 2022 has now been resolved. The final gasp in that matter was CalAm's application for rehearing, pointing out errors that CalAm thought existed, and made another full-on attempt to seek to have other 4 key items resolved in their favor, and that's all noted in footnotes on this on the memo at page 57. The bottom line, though, is that CalAm's special requests were not allowed, and so you'd think that's really good. Okay, this is a 3-year rate case. Unfortunately, it was filed in 2022. Here we are, 2025. We are at the tail end of that rate case. As a matter of fact, CalAm's next 3-year rate cycle begins, and we are anticipating that they will be filing in July of this year for the next 3-year rate cycle. And nothing prevents them from re-arguing any of these points that they tried to get but did not prevail on. I believe that the district's had a robust history of participating in these proceedings, and we've had some really good success. But we'll have to wait to see what it is CalAm asking for to decide if we're going to participate and what our arguments will be.
Chances are we'll be participating.
Pardon?
Chances are we'll be participating.
That would be what we've done in the past.
Okay.
Yes. The only other case that I'd like to point out is the last one cited, and this was the original challenge, the 2010 challenge to the cease and desist order against the state board. That's the case that was put on the back burner so we could discuss it. That's the one that has basically faded into history. The Sierra Club had on May 6th filed a motion to dismiss the case. No parties opposed that motion, and we anticipate that the court will grant the motion to dismiss. That does not mean that we need to acquiesce to the state board's continued regulation of the of CalAm and water that's taken, and in terms of implementing the CDO. If the state board is not reasonable or fair or equitable in terms of how they're treating this area as compared to other water short areas, then there are still other avenues that we can use to challenge actions of the state board or inactions of the state board. But the point being that it no longer made sense to tie ourselves to the facts as they were in 2010. Whatever the circumstances in terms of what the state board will be doing or not doing, it'll be founded in today's facts, with today's water supply, with today's demand, and that's the basis that a challenge should be made. So,
is there any evidence that that's the case, that that they are being looked at differently, that we're being looked at differently.
Oh, I think you can't
I mean-
point to another area of the state that has is under a cease and desist order when they are not exceeding their known supplies. Our demand has fallen greatly
Yeah.
from what it had been. Our supplies has grown greatly, and yet we still have a CDO. We still have a restriction on new connections. Why? The state board would have to justify the why.
I have a question that's triggered off of Kate's comments, but goes to the Apple Valley question about what's the standard of review. I was just curious about on page 58, you've got a list of workshop items that were discussed in a PUC acquisition rulemaking in a case. And some of the questions that were raised in the workshop sound like they could be applied to the elements or standard of review. I'm trying to get some meat on the bones of standard of review, and I just haven't gotten there yet. And I wonder if this is
I don't think that the acquisition rulemaking is at all a standard that you should be thinking about in terms of that standard review, because rulemaking is not an adjudicatory proceeding, it's a legislative proceeding. So that when the PUC decides how they're going to do rulemaking, they have a much different standard. It's not a judicial proceeding in that sense. It's an administrative proceeding, but they're allowed legislative discretion in terms of how they do that. It's much different for the acquisition of Cal-Am under the eminent domain process.
Okay, well, it's still wait and see for me to see some of the details at some point.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Any other comments or questions from the board to add or to? Let's go out to the public.
Yes, we have Michael Bear.
Michael?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I got a couple of comments and then a question. It is mind numbing, all of the cases. And I just want to thank you for your persistence. You know, stand tough, stand tall, stand your ground. Don't get overwhelmed by it. You know, keep fighting. I think we will prevail in the long run. And as another idea around, you know, that you're collaborating with MCWD and Marina on whether or not to appeal that decision with the Coastal Commission. And it's great to see you collaborating. Won't it be nice to collaborate on water supply projects than on legal cases? Yeah, I actually have two questions. One about the CDO that you were just talking about, and you're absolutely right. You know, we've solved we're off the river. You know, we're clearly we've got a huge cushion there, and it should be taken off. So my first question is, what leverage can be applied to get the state water board to move on that? You know, is there a process is it going to be in limbo forever, or you know, how can they be leveraged to be forced to make a statement one way or the other? And then my second question, you mentioned Judge Rivamonte talking about eminent domain and appeal. I missed that step. I didn't. Well, what's the appeal? I thought we were just going forward with briefings and moving forward on eminent domain. What did I miss? That I've never heard of this Judge Rivamonte. What step did I miss there? So those are my two questions and comments, and I just really appreciate all you people for all the hard work.
The Superior Court, assigns judges to cases. Judge Villarta was previously assigned to this case. It was reassigned to Judge Rivamonte. I can't comment more because court doesn't tell us why they do that, and the parties are not able to challenge that. But I have to say that we're very pleased with that draw. And as to the state Water Resources Control Board and actions there. It's really beyond the discussion of this litigation that's ongoing, and I can assure you that there are ongoing discussions with state board staff on any variety of things, but particularly on the CDO. And I know that we have discussions. We have a planned call just on Wednesday with state board staff and council on matters dealing with them. And we are doing so collaboratively with other agencies.
Okay, thank you. And just to remind the public, we're not obligated to respond to questions that come from the general public. But if it's kind of in the flow of understanding and so on, we'll go where we can go.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to wish you a good night.
We won't see you anymore. All right. We'll go to the next item, which is director's report. Meetings, attendance at conferences and so on, comments. Anybody from the board that had attended, something to say, anything?
I did.
Okay.
I participated in the meetings that along with our staff and council had with the assigned commissioner in the case that Dave Laredo was just telling us about at the CPUC, that the estimates of supply and demand, that proposed decision, which as we have discussed, we disagreed with a lot of what was in there. So we met with the assigned commissioner. Every case of the CPUC has one commissioner assigned who's sort of in charge of managing the case. We met, she had an all-party meeting, meaning in one meeting, all of the parties that wanted to participate did. And then we met with the advisors of 3 other commissioners. And I think the all-party meeting was quite interesting, particularly because you had Cal-Am and all the other parties, including the Marina Coast Water District and the City of Marina and so on. It drew attention to the fact that it's a very lopsided situation with Cal-Am on one side saying one supply and demand is this, and all the other parties on the other side saying, no, Cal-Am is overestimating demand and discounting supply is. And I think that the meetings may have had an impact because they wanted to vote that proposed decision out on the consent agenda, as Dave Laredo explained last week, and it was held for further review. So that probably means they're making corrections and changes, and we'll have to see. But fingers crossed, maybe some of the changes that we asked for.
And just to further comment on it, I understand there may be a dozen or so members of the public participated in that PUC hearing just a few days ago.
There were.
Yeah.
Just participated.
Might have been 16 members of the public on this topic.
Yeah, and since you brought that up, it's not too late for the public. The public can still send in comments via the CPUC website, and then can also comment at the next voting meeting, where they will probably vote on a probably revised proposed decision. But sooner is better, because now they're working on change, in my opinion, based on my experience there, because they're working on changes now. If you speak the day of the voting meeting, they're not going to be very motivated to make more changes. So if members of the public want to comment to the CPUC, I would say do it right away.
Thank you, Karen.
That's all.
Okay, that was report in general from the board. Next item on the agenda, item 13, is the public hearing on the quarterly supply strategy water budget. Jonathan.
Yes, good evening, Chair Riley, members of the board. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, this is your public hearing, item 13, which is consider adoption of July through September 2025 quarterly water budget supply and strategy. So this will be the fourth quarter of this water year 2025 and will dovetail with Dave's reports and be the strategy of how to produce water through this fourth quarter, maximize our water rights, and how the water supply projects are going to feed into that. So next slide, please. We look always at the predicted precipitation, and as to quote Dave, we're in the dog days of summer. So if you can see in our area, the map, it says equal chances, which is less than 0.25 inches. So we'll see what happens. No expectations. The quarterly water budget takes into account all the state board orders, 9510, all of these in between, which define how CalAm can use its well fields at different times during different flow regimes in the river, and then 2016-0016, which was the cease and desist order that came down. It targets the district's rules 160, which the board has adopted at the beginning of each water year, saying the allocation of which water right and which water project to meet the looking forward water year. And it includes the 3376 of river production. For ASR water project, we injected 716 acre feet in water year 2025. All said, we have 4,392 acre feet of just ASR and storage. That doesn't include the operational yield from Pure Water Monterey. There was no need from the group to use any of that as a source of water for the remaining 3 months of this water year. So 0 acre feet are scheduled to be recovered, which will leave the balance in the ground for starting for water year 2026. As Dave stated, this is being kind of viewed as our drought reserve. So should we enter a drought, we have lots and lots of water now in the ground that we've been building up over the last few years. Table 13, we had 182 acre feet this water year, which is the flow driven water right. Because we're outside of the window, we expect none of that water right to go to water supply. And in Pure Water Monterey operations, as Dave also stated earlier, there's about 300 acre feet in the ground that CalAm has not recovered. They are looking to chip away at that and recover a lion's share of that. So the target will be 1,305 acre feet of water from the Pure Water Monterey that's being injected currently throughout this quarter, and then also to recover the amount of water that they have kind of squared themselves up coming into the end of the water year. And at this quarter, none of the injection that we do is seen to go into the operational reserve unless there is a little bit more over the 3,500, but we don't foresee that happening. So we think that the operational reserve will stay where it's at. Next slide. Thank you. We plan this water budget, because we're coming up to the end of it, to use all of the Seaside Basin coastal sub-area native groundwater, which is the 1474. It assumes, again, that we'll keep all of the ASR in the ground for next year. We'll keep the operational reserve at the current level, and we are going to get as close to the 3376 acre feet of Carmel River production that we can. When I show you the water budget, you can see with what we've produced, and if we are able to get for June about 300 acre feet out of the river, we'll be very, very close to the 3376 at the close of the water year, which is good news. The water budget is, of course, us, CalAm, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the NOAA Fisheries, and the State Water Resources Control Board. And we met on June 4th, 2025 as a strategy group and came up with this draft budget to present to you. This is the budget as it comes down from all the words to the numbers. We'll move across top of the chart where we have the Carmel Valley Aquifer. Because we're in the low flow regime, The upper subunits, the wells are not allowed to be produced from one of the state board orders we discussed earlier. So all water will come out of the lower subunits, which will be 340, 355, 285, which will get us very close, as I was saying, if we are able to produce 300 in June to the 3376. So all of that coming out of the Carmel Valley Aquifer will go to meet system demand. And then out of the Seaside groundwater basin will produce the native water, the 100, 100, 135 for the months of July through September to get to the 1474. We'll hope to get 25 acre feet a month out of the desal plant, Sand City desal plant, and then 475, 445, and 385 out of pure water Monterey for July through September, respectively, and that will equal the amount that is in the ground and help Cal-Am to get back to close to zero net of what they've paid for and what they've recovered. All of that sums together to an assumed usage for 940, 925, and 930 from July, August, September. And this is typical as we see that as we move through July, August, and September, the system demand does start to fall off. And so the next slide will say the recommendation is if this is acceptable for you to adopt this, the district will then take this and file the necessary CEQA paperwork with the county. But I think, can we go back one slide, Sarah, in case there's any questions about the numbers? And that concludes my presentation unless there's questions.
Any questions or comments from the board? Yes, Kate.
Thank you. And thank you, Jonathan. Couple questions. Let's see, let me go back to slide. This was the slide that starts with the bullet point, assumes full utilization. And the question that I have, actually, no, previous slide before that. I realize that we wouldn't be doing ASR in the months that you're talking about, July through September, but just a question again, going back to ASR, in wetter months, why can't we do more than 716? What's the obstacles to maximizing that even more and getting to the number?
I'll take that one, John.
Sure.
So we have water rights that would allow us in extremely wet conditions to actually inject over 5,000 acre feet. It's highly unlikely that we would ever get close. The best year we've ever had is 2,345. And that was a very good year and very, very good outcome.
Mm-hmm.
The barriers to success are either the conditions of the wells in the Carmel Valley, because you got to pull water out of the ground. And so when we had flooding and certain wells were taken offline, it took a while for them to get put back online because you've got to test for bacteria and other things. And so that's an obstacle to withdrawal. And then over here on the injection side, we have 4 injection sites, ASR wells 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 3 and 4 have been converted to production only for now. We believe that 4 is going to come back with its Baskey valve reinstalled and reconnected so it can be used for injection. So you need all of your injection sites working to get your 18, 19 acre feet per day max. Without it, we're down closer to 11 to 13 acre feet per day, which is what we did this year. So then you're just limited by the number of rainfalls. And John has a kind of the perfect world scenario where, an inch of rain every 10 days would be great. It would set us up really nicely, but, our rain tapered off this year. And so we're only as good as the rain, but we're also only as good as the injection field and the extraction capacity on the river. And so.
Second question, it was just sort of triggered by the presentation and looking at the quarterly water supply budget chart. And I'm just curious if, again, this is probably a Dave question and not a Jonathan question, but when you said, and you show on this, the chart that we're not able to take from the upper subunits this time of year. That makes perfect sense, but you mentioned that that was because of the order. And I'm just curious if we would have some better luck trying to lift the cease and desist order if we kept things in place or were willing to keep policies in place that are clearly good for the river.
Yeah.
I don't know why
And-
we'd ever want to.
And that prohibition on the upper is not in the cease and desist order. It was a separate order. But
Okay,
it kind of orders writ large on the river. But yeah, even with respect to the cease and desist order, highly likely that there will remain in place a version of the cease and desist order with reporting requirements and other things. So it's that's been the nature of the conversation.
good.
You know, earlier you brought up cease and desist, and we have had conversations. We had all 5 state water board members, as well as key staff. And all right, I'm just going to say Mike's idea is that we're out on parole with an ankle bracelet. And so, you know, something continues to exist with some guardrails on it, but the moratorium gets lifted so we can move.
Got
So
it. Thank you.
And if Dave, I'd just say that the low flow was created by the State Board Order 9810. So it's, as you said, completely different, and that's not what the talk is about. And to the other limitations, what I like to say is the river and the climate gives you so many operational days, and it's how successful you can be with them, with your communication and with Cal-Am and getting everybody going. And we've gotten very, very good at working with Cal-Am and operating. So we made the most of every operational day we had. And with the other physical limitations, just where we got this year.
Well, I'll just finish by saying I was, very pleased with the report and the proposed water supply strategy. So thank you so much.
These questions not only clarify for individuals, but clarify for the public as well. So, I appreciate the questions and the responses. It's just not just the question. So there's nothing more on item 13.
This is a public hearing item. You want to open up to the public, and then you'll want to look to adopt the staff recommendation.
Okay, and is this considered an ordinance where we have a roll call for? Well, we have a roll call anyway. Never mind. So I'll go out to the public on this. Anyone here wanted to comment, or we'll go also to those online?
Yes, Chair Riley, we have Michael Bear's hand raised.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, okay. I don't come to all the meetings, but I like to talk. I want to first compliment Ms. Daniels for diving down in, asking that question. I really appreciate you scrutinizing that. Every acre foot is, a quarter, it does 4 homes for a year. So thank you for doing that. And kind of riffing off the question of, what are the obstacles, and listening to the answers. I'm just curious, and I don't know how much you could say, but is when you talk about the injection wells and the problems of injection well 3 and 4, what's going on? I don't fully understand it, but I did understand it from the year before that Cal-Am is needs that water or is using those wells to put water in, to recover water, put it into the system. And it comes down to seasonal work. If ASR season is a short period of time and you need to maximize your wells during, as John was saying, you got to have certain conditions. I'm really glad to hear you guys are communicating better with Cal-Am. I guess my question is Cal-Am still an obstacle to not using those injection wells at an appropriate seasonal level to maximize ASR? If that's a clear question. I mean, if you didn't have to talk to, if you were running that if you were doing distribution and you didn't have to talk to Cal-Am, would this problem still exist with those wells in their current state? I know there's factors and I don't understand them all, but that's my question. To what extent are they an obstacle in how those wells are utilized during ASR season?
I'm waiting for the chair to say we're not obligated to answer every question, but I'm happy to answer it.
If there's a short answer, I would like to have the dialogue kind of exposed, shared.
Right now, we're stuck in we're in a tweener. We're in between, Calam has two new production wells or extraction wells called Bayonet 1 and 2 that should come online by the end of the calendar year-ish. And so that will get them more production capacity. They're not really psyched about using ASR well number 4 for production. They've had issues with water quality and treatment, and it may find its way back to just being an injection only well. But as of right now, today, 3 and 4 were converted to production because the Bayonet 1 and 2 were not yet ready, and they need more capacity as we've shifted the availability of supply from the south, from the river, up to the north from the Seaside Basin. And so their ability to get water out of the ground was lagging the ability of us to put water in the ground. And so, first delivery of pure water was 2020, and there hasn't been a new well developed yet. So those two new wells will help alleviate that.
Hey, do you have something?
I'm just curious, in the long run, so those two new wells, will they solve the problem? Or should we be focused on looking to resources for a new well that could be for this purpose?
Well, yeah, so that's a great question. So there's two more wells called extraction wells 3 and 4 to be located in the Fitch Park neighborhood, which will also be extraction wells. That will create surplus extraction capacity up there. On the injection side, we've talked about putting in an injection well. We've got a site for it. Unfortunately, the overhead wires might be a constraint, but bringing ASR well number 4 back into the mix as an injection option may decrease the need to do a new well. That would give us the capacity we need to kind of max out on the capacity coming through the pipeline over the hill. So,
and through the chair, I just want to bring us back to the agenda. This does go
Yeah.
beyond the item, maybe something to agendize for a future date.
Yeah. Maybe that's something I could ask for, just a future agenda item where we can get a report back on that well and whether or not we should be looking for.
Yep.
Okay, that getting the advice and moving ahead. Okay, so we've gone out to the public, I believe. Are there any other members of the public who would like to comment? Okay, back to the board. Entertain a motion to approve the proposed production strategy or the quarterly strategy report for July through September 2025.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Vice Chair Oglesby,
Aye.
Chair Riley.
Aye.
Motion is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Item 14 is the first reading of a draft ordinance number 198 on definitions and permit process. That's Stephanie?
It is. Thank you. Chair Riley, members of the board. This is the first reading of ordinance 198. It's actually a very simple little ordinance compared to what you normally have seen. And so my presentation will be fairly short. Go ahead. Yeah. So this ordinance actually makes amendments to 3 rules, Rule 11, Rule 23, and Rule 24. Rule 11 is definitions. And so this amends definitions for the term new construction and also amends the definition of the main California American water system. The ordinance adds definitions for a dormitory bed at an educational institution and adds a definition for advanced treated recycled water. And that is mostly because we had a definition for recycled water, but with Pure Water Monterey, which takes it to a higher level of treatment, we wanted to add that definition. The amendments to Rule 23, there are a number of just very, very minor edits for clarity. But the big change here is that I've reorganized the rule to take out the metering requirements from 23A and move them to 23B. 23B is mandatory conditions. And so that section was taken out and moved to section B and kind of reorganized to make it easier for not only staff, but the public to be able to understand what the metering requirements are. And then finally, Rule 24 amendments. Last August, the board adopted an urgency ordinance, which was number 196. And that ordinance expires after 1 year. So this ordinance codifies the language that the board approved last August regarding second bathrooms. Essentially what it was is a little loophole that allowed people who may have removed fixtures from their own second bathroom to add another water fixture elsewhere on the property to come back in and use the second bathroom protocol. And so what we did last year was just to close that loophole, and it's carried over in this ordinance. So the recommendation this evening is the board conduct a public hearing, take comments from the public before approving the first reading of ordinance number 198. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions from board members, comments?
So just for clarification, water meter requirements on page 82 is a new section?
Well, it was relocated from, it was relocated from previously in that rule.
Okay. And it's under construction of a new structure now, or is it something? No. It's
No. Yeah. So
Got
Rule
it.
23 is all about how the permit process is. And so I just moved it from the first section of that rule to section B because it makes more sense that it's a mandatory condition.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
I can imagine you have some pretty interesting dialogue at the counter over some of these things. I'm glad to see ordinances cleaned up and
You will
clarified.
be getting several of these over the next several months.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that. Any other questions that the board might have? I want to go out. Public hearing? All right, public hearing time. Any comments from here locally or online?
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
Okay, last call for inside here. Okay, back to the board. I have no questions. I'm just glad to see when it's cleanup time. That's like makes sense to me. Okay, I don't entertain a motion to close public comment and adopt the draft ordinance 198.
Approve first reading of the ordinance.
Approve the first reading, right? Okay, because there'll be another round.
So moved, Chair.
Second it.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Edwards.
Yes.
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Vice Chair Oglesby,
Aye.
Chair Riley.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
So let me.
I want to thank Stephanie because it did make a lot more sense. Reading through it's like, okay, instead of, having to juggle it around and so forth. So it's well done.
Okay, next item is the proposed budget for next fiscal year. Michelle?
Yes, good evening, Chair, members of the board and the public. So this item before you is to consider the adoption of the proposed fiscal year budget for 25-26, and I will be providing a synopsis. A budget workshop was conducted on May 29th. Next slide, please. And the budget was extensively deliberated by the board. No public comment was received during this workshop. And I'll try to condense whatever was discussed into a few slides here for the benefit of those who might be listening now or later. So the district's proposed budget for next fiscal year is 46.5 million. It's an increase of slightly under 4% from the current revised budget. The big changes are number one, the budget for a purchase and sale of water that has gone up from 3,500 acre feet to 4,800 acre feet. And that assumes that the Pure Water Monterey expansion project will be complete by the end of October. And then we'll have added capacity from November onwards. And then the second piece is we are using a little over $500,000 of our fund balance to balance this budget, which is less than 1% of our total budget. But that's mostly because of the discontinuation of the water supply charge revenues, although that effect has been muted because of increased revenues from other sources like user fees, property taxes, and capacity fees. But we have taken a conservative approach to our revenues, and there's a good possibility that our capacity fees and permit revenue might be higher than expected, in which case we may not have to rely on the general reserves. And in terms of changes from the workshop, there are no major changes. It's the same budget. We had some minor changes on the presentation side in terms of percentages that compared the proposed budget with the current budget. And we also noticed there are like minor one-word typos, which we'll correct on pages 4, 8, and 35. But other than that, in terms of more substantive changes, there are two. Number one, we received an email from the Monterey Chamber of Commerce asking that the district provide in the budget the rate at which it's selling wholesale water and how we computed the amount of water to be sold. And so this information is on page 2 of the transmittal. The district is purchasing and selling water at the rate of 4,356 acre feet. And the amount of water purchased is prorated at the rate of 3,500 acre feet for the first 5 months, and then 5,750 acre feet for the next 7 months. And then besides that, we're also carrying a budget of 250 acre feet for the operating reserve. And then the second major change is thanks to Director Paul, she pointed out some edits on the section titled District Purpose and Activities. And these, I think these edits are more general and they make the message a little bit clearer. But the big change is that we are providing a chronological list of water supply projects that the district has undertaken over the years. So starting from the Peralta well and the reclamation project that added about 1,000 acre feet, and then the aquifer storage and recovery and the Pure Water Monterey projects that have added about 15,000 acre feet in the last several years. So those are the changes. And then, thank you. So this slide compares the proposed budget with the current year budget at mid-year. And so the proposed budget is in dark blue and the current year budget is in light blue. So personnel expenditures are higher by about 8%. So there's about 317,000 increase in salaries and then other changes in increases in benefits. Now this is mostly related to cost of living adjustments and then step increases. Plus, we have a full-time position, an AGM position for the entire 12 months, which we didn't have in the current year. The second category, services and supplies, is lower by 15%, and that's because in the current year we had litigation costs related to the water supply charge. That was about $500,000. We won't have those costs next year. And then the third category, water purchase, that is obviously higher. We are buying 35% more water at a rate of about 4.5% higher than this year. Fourth category, reimbursement projects, that's slightly lower, mostly because the budget for the Pure Water Monterey expansion project is lower than what we had in the current year. Project expenditures comparable. There's some minor additions here. For instance, we're demolishing Fort Ord well number 10. And there's some other projects, so that's making it slightly higher than what we have in the current year. And then reserves is lower by 3.3 million because we will be expending the water supply charge this year, even though the cash will go out next year. And for this, we consulted with the auditor, as I had mentioned during the budget workshop, if an expense is known and measurable, it needs to be recorded in that year. And so we'll be recording that expense related to the disbursement of the water supply charge this year. So all in all, that brings the budget. So that makes the budget higher by about 3.96%. Thank you, Sarah. So now moving the focus from price to what is the budget buying us? And here we're trying to highlight two things. One, our budget has grown over time, but that's because of several reasons. Number one, we have moved from being a planning agency to a water wholesaler, and we are purchasing more water, which is what you see in the blue section of that graph. And then the purple section is that we are just undertaking larger water supply projects, such as the Pure Water Monterey expansion project. And so that has increased our budget over the years. But if you look at the bottom two layers, that's our personnel, services, and supplies budget. And that has remained kind of stable, maybe just adjusted for inflationary increases. And so I was looking at the budget from 2016-17, when we had a budget of 13 million, but our full-time employees at that point were 29 employees. And now with a budget of 5.6 million, we're at 26 employees. So, we haven't grown. I mean, that just shows that, maybe we are more efficient as an organization. So that's point number one. And so what does this baseline budget buy us? And these statistics are coming from the most recent annual report, which was a full year. So this budget, so we have been processing about 700 permits, a little over 1,000 conservation rebates. We've been conducting about 1,200 property inspections. We are maintaining production records of more than 1,100 wells and injecting more than 1,500 acre-feet of rainwater in the Seaside Basin and rescuing more than 5,600 steelheads, among other things. So I think that gives a good flavor of our baseline budget and what it buys us.
I have a question on that one, actually. On the second tier of prices, 22, 23, there's this little tiny line that says capital outlay, which I don't see anywhere else. Is that?
Yeah, capital outlay could be vehicle purchases and then minor additions for facilities and such. And our capital outlay has really reduced in the proposed budget and in the current year budget. What we had in 23, 24, I'll have to look into what that might be.
It's there, it's just so thin.
It's very light.
So-
Yeah, it's hard to read,
Okay,
perhaps.
and is it in the 24, 25 and 25, 26?
Yes.
Super light.
Really? Oh, my goodness, you have good eyes.
No.
No, it's just super skinny, yeah.
Okay,
In the grand scheme of things, it's like very tiny.
Yeah.
So it's hard to read.
But the important takeaway is the purple, which is project expenditures, will go away. The blue will not go away, and we don't want it to go away, but we've taken on a new, bigger function,
mhm.
which is going to have embedded in it its own inflation every year for labor, energy, and chemicals. So you can't expect, even for the same quantity of water, if we sell a full 5,750 every year going forward, you'll still see it rise a little bit due to inflation. But yeah, that's a new business line for us. If you go back 10 years, you wouldn't see that. And you also wouldn't see as much purple because you spent the purple to do the blue.
Mhm.
So
You really think
Yeah,
that we
that's
can
a good way of putting it.
reduce the purple a whole lot?
yeah, because this budget includes what now, about
Well, 9.5
million of
Yeah. 9.5 million for the Pure Water Monterey and about a little over 2 million for the IRWM grants.
yeah.
Okay.
And so Pure Water Monterey will be done. It's the last money that seems to be going out. And so, unless we want to build another injection well or something, but those will be smaller level capital expenditures.
Thank you.
Yeah, so here we were talking about operations, and then besides day-to-day operations, the budget also sets aside funding for the strategic goals. And so a big chunk of our budget goes to goal number 1, which includes, increasing water supply. So if we include the purchase and sale of water and the big projects that we are doing, about 30 plus million of our budget goes to goal number 1. Then for goal number 2, public ownership of Monterey water system, we have set aside about 600,000. This number can be increased if our rate of spending increases. Goal number 3 and 4, seaside groundwater basin management and public engagement, we have set aside about 200,000 there. And then goal number 6, review of the Carmel River mitigation program, we are setting aside about 100,000 in budget there. And then goal number 5 is an all-encompassing goal. It helps at every other goal, and that's just part of our operating budget. So that's an overview. And then besides this, we're also setting aside budgets for our long-term liabilities related to pension, healthcare, and capital replacement. And we project that our general reserve should be above 16 million at the end of the next fiscal year. And that brings us to the final slide. So that's the summary, and staff recommends adoption of the budget, and we might make some changes and make some corrections to a few typos that we noticed. That's it.
It reminds me of a question at the recent conference. I attended the same conference here locally. And I went to a couple of the financial discussions, and in the benefits side, there was some fret, I think, some concern expressed by the audience group of how much do you cover the projected benefit cost into the future? How close do you get to 100%, or how far away can you tolerate being away from 100%? Most people are not 100%. And I don't know if 80% is a pretty standard or not, but I'm just kind of wondering where we stand and what's the thinking there about how that ratio works. I mean, how does it play out for you, for us?
Yeah, we bring this item to the board and the FSC committee, I think around December. And so there's a CalPERS valuation report that tells us where we stand. I think we are at about 70% or in that range. That number fluctuates. So this is what should be our funded ratio for our pension obligation. And we have an obligation of about 7.5 million as of last year. For the healthcare piece, that is an unfunded plan. So we pay as we go. We don't have a trust fund there. And that obligation is, I think, around 5 million. And so what is the optimal funded ratio? I think we'll bring this item in front of the board, because we'll come up with the reserves policy. And there we want to, have a well-informed recommendation on how the district should tackle this.
Has the prior board established a target at all, or
No, the prior board came up with the concept of setting aside a small amount of money for both OPEB and PERS every year, but it wasn't based on great science. It was just, fund something. And so that's grown to, I can't remember what the reserve number is.
1.4 million between the two, or 1.6 million projected at the end of the fiscal year, next fiscal year. Because we have been setting aside 100,000 for each every year. So that's where it stands.
Well, as we're cleaning up, I should say, that may be a better word terminology for this, but as we remove the one fee and no longer have that revenue source, and we have pretty, good confidence in the projections of the other revenue sources around. And then the question of using the reserve fund to balance the budget and all that, I'm just thinking that it may be a good timing to just evaluate a policy approach to that, or are we there yet? This is my question.
Yeah,
do we have enough data and enough experience to be able to do that, or are we still several maybe years away?
No, we're there. There's there are strong differences of opinion out there among other public agencies as to what you should fund, what you shouldn't fund, at what level. But we have this, it's on our internal plan to present to you some, a basis for a reserve policy, and that would be part of it. But I can tell you, just as an example, in the 90s, that was a real big wave of concern over unfunded pension liabilities. And many public agencies went out and did what are called sidecar financings. They said, let's fill the whole deficit up. Let's just bite the bullet. City of Carmel, as an example, did like 9 million or whatever it was. And what you're doing in that case is replacing the liability, you're filling it, and now you've got the debt to repay.
It's just a trade-off.
Over time. It's a trade-off, but it gave them the comfort that there was not this unfunded liability, and now it was just a little mortgage to be paid off over a period of time. The problem is that all of this, as you've seen in December, depends on your assumed earnings rate, your demographics, and your discount rate. And so you could immediately get rid of your obligation doing a financing, let's say, and be in a deficit or even be in a surplus. You've now overdone it because of the changing nature. So even entities that have set up trust funds and tried to fund a piece of it don't want to do 100% because you could be overfunded if the numbers change a little bit, and you could be immediately underfunded because of conditions as well. PEPRA kind of changed the whole tune on PERS. And so as we shift from an older organization to a younger organization, that unfunded liability isn't going to grow the way it used to. So we got to factor some of those kinds of things into it. But we are going to come back and say, given what we're doing right now, here's where the general reserves should be. Here should be a target for OPEB. There should be a target for PERS. You do have options to wrap it up where it's no longer discretionary money. We'll talk about the pros and cons of that as well. But those two reports usually come out in December, as Nichelle said.
And the PERS numbers come from the state, right?
Yeah, and they're always a
But
year out of date.
The other piece of it, the OPEB piece,
That's been
is generated locally. Is that
Yeah.
my understanding? Is that right?
Yeah, we have a consultant, an actuarial consultant that generates the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
But two different sources are coming into
Yeah.
providing input.
Yeah. And I have thoughts on, so what Dave was mentioning was, they call it pension obligation bonds. It makes sense when the interest rate is really low, because the discount rate for pension is 7.2%. If the interest rate is lower, let's say 2%, you finance the debt at 2% and pay off the 7.5%. But if the interest rate's high, like we have now, then pension obligation bonds do not make sense. But there are other ways, like you can reduce the amortization schedule. There are other things you could do. But like step one is what should be the funded ratio, and then step two is what are the strategies to close the gap, and we can think on both lines and come up with something.
So if I heard correctly, then it's not something we even need to request. You'll come in December and we'll have a conversation about a reserve policy.
Yeah, it's on our to-do. The two things that we talked about during strategic planning is a focus on revenues to be a little bit more accurate as to what we think we're going to receive, and then a focus on reserve policies.
Great.
Yeah, good. Good.
To the chair.
Yes.
I see we got a slide on our Measure J acquisition. Could we go over that right fast? And then I have another question for you.
Yeah, and it's a great point, because it's been kind of the ghost in the budget, because we've not pre-committed to certain things until you cross the milestone to commit to them, and so we haven't always budgeted. But we do have money in the budget. What you see here, though, is expenditures from the beginning, so from 2018, and we've kind of gone through certain phases. We had the financial feasibility phase, which was the 646,000. Then we had the EIR and LAFCO application, and you may recall under the LAFCO application, LAFCO wanted us to foot the bill for them to hire a consultant. So it was a higher cost application process than it might normally be. And then we got sued over our CEQA work. And so we had a CEQA lawsuit, and then we got sued over LAFCO. If you look at item 20 in the packet, the informational items, you'll see that the LAFCO litigation, that budget is gone. But the attorneys who will be defending the appeal are actually assisting us in the phase that we're currently in. So they exist with a budget line item, but we no longer are calling it the LAFCO. It's LAFCO related issues that are in the eminent domain case. But so we cleared those two lawsuits, which together cost us more than $500,000. If CalAm hadn't sued, that would have been $500,000 of savings. Then we moved into the appraisal that led to the resolution of necessity that you approved at that MIS meeting. And that brings us to the current phase that we're in, which is the eminent domain phase. All in, we budgeted just over 3 million, but we've only expended the 654 million that you see spent to date.
654 million.
I'm sorry, 654,000.
Yes.
Good catch. And so about 1/5 to date, roughly. And because of this Apple Valley Supreme Court delay, our current year budget that you're adopting has less in it. But the approvals were based on the full scope of work. So that's going to roll over probably to the 26-27 fiscal year. We don't expect our bench trial to happen any sooner than the Supreme Court, which means we're 14 to 16 months away, best case. So we'll be squarely into the 26-27 budget at that point.
So we basically caught up. No else.
Yep.
Still dead out there, but
Yeah, and we're still expending.
right.
We have, the LAFCO appeal was mentioned. The LAFCO related issues, so this activation of latent powers, whether we did or didn't need it, remains a key issue in the eminent domain proceeding. So that's why we've now taken the attorneys, Shoot Mahali, and moved them up from just working on the LAFCO appeal to any LAFCO related issues in this current phase.
And
So the total budget that from what we've spent to what we've authorized is just under 6 million over 7 years.
okay.
But we've only expended 3.497. So
Okay. So it's no, like I said, attorney fees been paid.
all of our out of pocket has been paid out of pocket. When you consider what it is over we've been at this now a number of years, I won't say it's less significant, but it's not as big as it sounds because it's been dribs and drabs over a long period of time. Our exposure, if we lose, is still significant. That's where that reserve policy is going to have some import because you don't want to say, oh, we've got more than enough in general reserves and then have a large scale settlement against you. So that was a little bit of the impetus for why we want to talk about it this year.
Okay. And my next question I have for you gentlemen is this. What a future budget for 25-26 might look like?
For Major J.
Yeah, yes, a future budget. Like we're taking grants out?
Yep. So if you were to go to that's kind of what we intended to get to with the purple and the blue in it.
Yeah.
The purple would go away. So the remaining budget, I don't know, Sarah, if you can.
So we have 600,000 for Major J related expenses next year. And that's based on the rate of spending that we have for all of our utility consultants, Webb and Associates, Close and Associates, and then Reftelis and a few more. So we don't anticipate spending more than 50,000 a month for those consultants. And that's how we came with that 600,000 number. If something changes, then we will adjust that during the mid-year.
Okay,
And so for a total budget, as you look at the bar chart, we know for sure that 90% of the purple is going to disappear.
right.
Actually, we carry this as a project expenditure, don't we? So
Yeah.
So the exposure to the water acquisition costs are nestled in the purple. So there'll be something for that. You may recall we had a total budget for legal of over $1 million. And we have only expended, I think a few $100,000. So there's a whole lot of liability out there that to get all the way through the bench trial, we'll get to that $1 million number. It's just not happening as fast.
So our operational budget probably is going to be lower next year than this year. Because we're going to be erasing grants and stuff out of it. So
Correct.
just to estimate number, what it could be.
For the operational budget?
Yeah. For
Just the overall
future.
budget without the reimbursements.
So that purple is 12 million. You can take out 12 million. And so 45.6 million minus 12 million would be
33.
Yeah.
About 30. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, any other questions from the board? Go out to public,
I have a comment.
oh, sorry. Yes.
If I may, I like the way this budget report is presented. I like that it doesn't just give the required numbers, but it explains what the district has done in terms of especially water supply, developing the water supply story and the conservation and efficiency, demand reduction, all of that. And how the numbers relate to, what we're spending the money on our priorities and actually making progress with our priorities. Well, the acquisition, of course, is a long, hard story, but the water supply part is really looking like a success story in a very long and difficult, challenging situation. Anyway, I just like that it gives a picture of what the district actually does. And that could be of interest to, think of the audience, could be of interest to various people working in local government and state legislature, judges even possibly. So I really thank you, Nishil, and anyone else who worked on this to bring it together and do it this way.
And I'll just add to that,
I second that.
the graphics that you're presenting, it's a little more extensive and a little easier to kind of capture the relationships between different pieces of this.
Very helpful.
I appreciate that. Well, since this is a budget, what do we?
Wait.
You'll be looking for a motion to adopt the resolution.
Not the
Public comment,
Public hearing,
for the
public comment.
public comment on it, and then we can.
Okay, close public comment.
No, Susan.
Oh, I'm sorry, open it. I thought I just asked. Okay, open for public comment. Yes.
Okay, I have
No.
Good evening again, Tom Raleigh, Vice President, MPTA. Glad to see that the water supply charge has been deleted. Just a general comment. The old statement, a few million here and a few million there. Pretty soon you're talking real money. You're talking upwards ballpark 6 million on this trying to acquire a water company that's not for sale. If it was for sale, I could see spending millions, but it's not for sale. They've told you no repeatedly. And so this is what's disturbing, to see more money in the budget, big money being spent for that, when it could be spent for whatever. So, again, I think you need to really consider how much money you're putting aside for this when you're trying to buy something that's not for sale. It doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
That's why there's eminent domain law, which allows this. Thank you, Tom. Any other comments?
Yes,
Public, okay.
Chair Riley, we'll start with Susan Schiavone. Susan, when you're ready.
Good evening, thank you. Yes, that's what eminent domain is about, and that's what the voters voted for, so carry on. I just wanted to thank you too for the graphics and how that budget was presented, made it quite palatable for lay people out here. And I just had one question. The reserve has shrunk due to paying out for the water supply settlement. And then I hear that the expenses for building and projects will also go down. So how will that affect the reserve next year in comparison to those expenses? Will that kind of even that out again? Or are you looking at a reserve deficit, a lower reserve for some time due to the no longer having the water supply charge? Or could you just explain that a little bit to me? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So if I understand it, what would be the effect on district reserves because of the discontinuation of the water supply charge? I think that's what I got from the question. We will look at it every year when we do the budget because our revenues are growing, especially the user fees. And so there could come a time in the next couple of years where our user fees are at a level where, they have offset the reduction in the water supply charge. We're not there yet. At this point, we are projecting a deficit of a little over $500,000. If the revenues that we predict pan out, if we get better than expected revenues, then we might not get a deficit this year. So it's a discussion that we'll have every year when we put together the budget.
Yeah, and I'll just add the reimbursement, the purple piece of the bar included lots of grants. So we have the expenditure, but we also have the revenue that offsets it. The blue part of the bar, which was the sale of water, we purchase the water. We don't add administrative overhead, and then we sell the water. So it's offset by revenues. So the impact on reserves is even with the winding down of capital projects and the increasing sales of water will have very limited effect. And so we're probably going to be pretty flat on our ability to make deposits into our reserves for the next couple of years until the user fee, because it's a percentage on the CalAm bill, catches up with CalAm's rate increases that we know have been approved, just haven't all hit yet. And then Michelle's alluded to that there may be some capacity fee receipts and others that will be bigger, but yeah, we can't grow out of the loss of the water supply charge immediately, but that's the direction, is that we will grow out of it within 2 to 3 years. And then we can start increasing reserves again up to whatever level of reserves the reserve policy sets. Once we get there, then on an annual basis, you can consider leaving the user fee set at the level, but choosing to not collect it at that level, meaning you always want to keep your authorization because it's gone through it. Part of it predated Prop 218, part of it went through a Prop 218. So you don't want to just give it all back. So you would keep your authorization, but at some point, we're not going to want to over collect. So once you've got your reserve policy and you know what your needs are, we hopefully will be in a position to back that 8.325% user fee down to 8, and then maybe 7 3/4 and so forth. But we're not there yet.
Well, we'll have that discussion when the timing is right.
Yeah.
Chair Riley, I have Michael Bear.
Okay, Michael?
I was not planning to speak, but Tom Raleigh poked the bear. Tom, we've been at this a long time, you and I. You longer than me, but I've been at it for about 12 years. And you have to upgrade your saying. That old saying, it now needs to be a billion here and a billion there, and that can add up to some real money. And what I mean by that is a couple things. Cal-Am has not updated the cost of building their desal plant since 2018. And if you remember, COVID kind of drove up costs, supply chain stuff, and we've got inflation that's going to be kicking off again. So, I think it's fair to say when you finance this thing over 25 years, it'll easily be over $1 billion. And there's only 40,000 ratepayers, and 90 some odd percent are residents. And that's $25,000 per hookup. And we're talking, there's a lot of wealthy people on the peninsula, but there's a lot of just house wealthy people, people on Social Security who bought their houses 40 years ago. And you are driving those people out if you build this thing. You won your tax thing. It's time for you to wake up. I have no further comment.
Well, you've made your comment. We've got them. Any other
Yes, I have
speakers?
Melody Crislock. Melody, when you're ready.
Melody Crislock, Public Water Now. So 10 years ago, or no, it's been like 12 years ago, when Public Water Now decided to put Measure J on the ballot, there was certainly no fantasy that Cal-Am would want to sell. That was the whole point of, because we knew MPWMD had the power of eminent domain. This was planned, never ever believing that Cal-Am would willingly sell. Why would they? We're their cash cow. They're wringing money out of us. It's amazing. I mean, if Cal-Am were allowed to do what it wants to do, it would mean economic disaster for this peninsula. You guys are the ones standing in the way of that. Thank God. Anyway, I wish Tom Raleigh would get his facts straight a little bit before he talks constantly. Thank you.
Okay, got that comment too. Anybody else?
Chair Riley, I see no other raised hands.
Okay, back to the board. Before us is the
Motion for adoption.
motion.
I move that we adopt the budget or next budget year.
Second.
Aaron, okay.
And quickly on the second,
Rebecca.
Oh, Rebecca, I'm
Rebecca.
sorry, okay.
quickly on the second, GM, CFO and staff, great job doing this budget. I didn't think it was gonna come out that good. But it came out good. Our study session was very good, and follow-up questions are very good, and you did an outstanding job on this budget. I look at pieces of it for the annual report that we're gonna have to put out. Might have to put out a third page because you have done a great job with this budget. People might need to, bring this out. But CFO, you did a great job. General manager and staff. So I want to thank you all for a great job on it.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
I'll take a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes. Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Vice Chair Oglesby,
Aye.
Chair Riley.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
So now we move to item 16, discussion item. Are these action items at all?
No,
or-
this was requested this is kind of the midpoint of the amnesty program, so it's just an informational item.
Okay,
And Stephanie has a few pages.
A few. Yeah, this one will be longer than the next one, but yeah, we were asked to give an update on the resolution 2024-13, which supports closure of open water permits by implementing a 1-year amnesty period. And Sarah? So the goal is to close out all the older water permits that are remaining in an unfinished status for one reason or another. The main drivers to close what are called open water permits. And so we've been working on this for the last 8 months. An open water permit is a water permit that has no final inspection. It can also be permits that have noticed non-compliance on them. So we did an inspection, but there was a non-compliance issue. And then the third category are inspections that were done where we found unpermitted water fixtures. So the amnesty periods was from October 1st, 2024 through September 30th of 2025. And the resolution authorized staff to use the district reserve allocation if needed to close these permits. And the resolution also waived a number of fees associated with closing those permits. So beginning in October of last year, we had orientation meetings with each of the jurisdictions' planning and building staff. And everybody was invited to a number of these different meetings. Those people who were not able to attend were given a video link so that they could get the information. So we just basically went through what the process was, what we were doing, what we would expect from each of the jurisdictions. A notice was run in the newspapers, and there was also at least one, possibly two different articles that were published about our program. And the process generally is that we send 3 letters to the current property owner. The first letter is goes into great detail about what the program is, why we are contacting them, even though in some cases it may be 30 years after the permit was issued, to notify them about the fact that we have not done a final inspection on the property. And I actually thought I had a slide in here that had a copy of a water permit on it, but the property owner is responsible to contact the district for a final inspection. And a number of the comments that we've received back from people who have gotten our letters is that they, one, obviously they're surprised it's been 30 years in some cases. But second, they don't understand that they were required to contact us. And so I wanted to show you the water permit that clearly says in 2 different places that a final inspection is required. And then when you sign the water permit, it clearly states down the bottom that it is the owner or the owner's agent's responsibility to contact the district and arrange for a final inspection, or other steps will be taken for enforcement purposes. So we've generally had positive responses to our letters, especially for people who call in and then get to talk to one of the staff who goes into greater detail about, this really was your responsibility. When they understand that, they're very accepting of that. There are cases where the property has transferred ownership, so it's not the owner, it's not the person who took out the permit any longer. And we have to explain to them that our permits run with the land, and it is the property owner who is ultimately responsible to comply with our rules. So I would say most of the responses have been positive. Oh, there's my permit. Okay. So right now we are doing the final inspections. If you can see on this permit, there are 2 red rectangles, one at the top, one at the bottom. Those are where the language is. And at the bottom, it says the current title holder of the property or his agent is responsible to ensure completion of a final inspection by the district. And one of the things we've heard a lot of is, well, I got my occupancy permit, or the city signed off on my building permit. And we have to explain, no, this is a separate inspection by the district. So in your packet, you've got this table. So we're still, like I said, finalizing permits that didn't have an inspection. We have been sending letters out in batches by jurisdiction, and we had 1,162 properties that were identified in this category. So at this time, we have sent letters to all of these open permit property owners. I think we are still finalizing part of Carmel and the unincorporated county areas, which were the last ones to receive letters.
Does that? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Does that account for the difference, like the percentage, like Carmel being so much lower is just because there's been less time, or do you think there's something else happening?
Yeah, they were sent out at the end of May. So
Okay.
yeah, it's just time.
And then what does deed restriction, the category, mean?
So our process is to send a first letter and a second letter. And so each of those letters have 30 days to respond. If we don't get a response to our second letter, we file a notice of noncompliance. And that is a deed restriction. It's recorded on the title of the property.
Got it.
And we also, so at that point, we send them another letter that includes this notification of the deed restriction. And so if we haven't heard from them, usually they contact us with the first letter. If they're going to ignore us, they'll ignore us first and second letter, but they definitely will contact us when they get a deed restriction. So,
And do you think, sorry, through the chair, do you think that the deed restriction letter, like when you get to some of these higher numbers of successfully closed, the higher percentages, do you think folks by and large understand through the language of the letter that this is an amnesty program, that this isn't punishment? I mean, I've had a couple calls to my office where they clearly didn't get it. We're now able to explain to them, but just wondering if there's, what your thoughts are on that.
well, the first letter is very clear about the amnesty program, and this, if they contact our office, they'll get a very detailed explanation. And I can tell you that staff goes overboard on saying, we are doing everything to help you. We're not trying to do anything to penalize you. We're just trying to close these permits. This is really a great opportunity for you. So yes, the second letter and the record, the letter that goes out with the notice of noncompliance, they are a little bit stiffer than the first one. But again, we've given them the information when we contacted them the first time.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I have a related, question. Thank you. So if you do file a deed restriction, do you then consider that permit remains open, or you do because it hasn't been?
Yeah, and I wanted to say that so when you're looking at these numbers, what often will happen is the deed restriction is recorded, and then they decide they're going to contact us to take care of the permit. So even though they have, we've taken it as far as doing the deed restriction, the amnesty period also lets us remove that deed restriction. So no matter when they contact us during this process, as long as we're still in this amnesty period, we'll take care of them.
Okay, but in terms of keeping track of all these permits, if there's a deed restriction and the owner doesn't get the inspection done, it remains open until that problem is addressed. Is that
Yes,
right?
and there will be some that will just not be taken care of during this program.
Yeah.
But we'll give you a report at the end. So I'll let you know ultimately where we stand.
Mm-hmm.
Through the chair, I actually have a question too.
Go ahead, Becca, and then I'll get you. I'll catch you.
I'm assuming that you are sending out these amnesty letters to the owner agent and not to the address of the permit violation.
Yes, we're sending them to the mailing address that is used to send their tax bills. So it's
Perfect.
yeah.
All right. Didn't want anyone getting lost in the rentals.
No, and I'm sure occasionally, there is probably a change in address that we don't know about, but neither does the county apparently. So,
Thank you.
Sarah, can you go to the next slide, please?
Hang on, we got one more question.
One more question. I think you answered it, but this is the question. If I do nothing, I get a deed restriction.
Yes.
Find out I'm going to sell the house. What happens? Do
Well,
I have to go get that deed restriction cleared? Will y'all
Yes.
clear it, or is it going to cost me?
It will, if you're not during the amnesty period, it will cost you. So,
Okay, after the amnesty period, that's what I want to hear. It's going to cost me.
yes.
Okay, and we got new fees out there. Okay,
And we have
thank
new
you.
fees. Okay, so then the next phase, which we just started sending letters on, is to clear open non-compliant permits. And so what we're doing is amending old permits that have notices of violation deed restrictions on them, as I just mentioned. And then we are permitting unpermitted fixtures that are found on inspection. And we just started this next phase. So this is pretty much what we're going to focus on between now and the end of September. So we're going to try to close as many permits as we can in this phase. Next. Impacts on staff. We've increased the number of inspections by about 100 per month as a result of the program. We've also increased our telephone calls, obviously, email, and the number of people coming into the office asking questions. We do find that there's a significant effort to do the follow-up, which can add approximately 30 minutes to our normal permit process for each one of these that we're working on. So staff has been very busy. They are very focused, and this is the #1 priority right now. The use of the district reserve allocation, as of May 31st, only 1.217 acre feet has been utilized. And I think that is remarkable to me. I thought it would be much more than that, but apparently what we're finding are a lot of permit amendments that either they didn't install as many water fixtures as they were permitted for, or they may have installed other things and not installed certain things, and so it comes out in the it comes out basically at a balance anyway. And we also have some different permit programs in place today that may not have been in place in the early or mid 90s. And so, for example, your master bathroom, you can have 2 sinks without getting charged for the second sink. And some of these older violations or old permits may have just had, showing that there was one sink, and we do an inspection and find 2 sinks. And we can just administratively correct that permit now. So that's been really good. And so I think we're going to continue to see just a very low use of the district reserve allocation. And monthly updates are provided to you in your board packet. Inspections are reported in the water conservation report. The use of district reserve water is in the monthly allocation report. And then we will provide you with a final report in October when we've wrapped up the program, and you'll have all the metrics at that time. And that is my presentation on the amnesty program.
Through the chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Karen.
Well, clearly it's a lot of work for staff, but it seems from what the data you've given us that it seems like you've made a lot of progress. Do you agree? Do you see it that way?
I think this is working very well. It's clearing up a lot of old records, and we've certainly changed our processes over the years, and in the last 8 years, we've got it down to real science as far as follow-up. So these are all old permits and old things that we may have had different databases in place. We didn't have enough people to do follow-up or whatever. We don't have that problem now, and we're cleaning it up. So it's great.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, good pointing that out. Yes, Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's a pretty simple question. Those that have a deed restriction now, they have until, I guess, the last day in October. When is the period over with?
The end of September.
End of September. So they have 3 or 4 months, 90 days, 100 days, some of these guys to understand I got a deed restriction and to do what I think I need to do from there.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Little less time, please.
Yeah, and this is a discussion item, so there's no action necessary.
We'll need to take it out for public comment, though.
Okay, out for public comment, we go. Tom, welcome.
Tom Raleigh, I'm speaking now as a licensed realtor and a member of the local government relations committee. And we haven't discussed this, but this is an outstanding program, and Stephanie has it well organized, as you recognize. And I've often wondered about people that were in violation that had never cleared them, and you're going after those people. But the section 1 item, the phase 1, is really outstanding to clear up all this. I mean, it's more than just record keeping, because we do have deadbeats. And basically, realtors, we get stuck with getting a listing, find out it's got a violation, has to be fixed. And it can be very costly, can screw up an escrow. And hopefully this will eliminate some of that. So I compliment the job that Stephanie's doing on this. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Any other comments locally in this room? How about outside?
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
Okay, back to the board. This is a information report, no action required. We'll proceed to the next item.
Next item, number 17, is also Stephanie, and we'll end on this one because item 18 was covered during the attorney's report and the discussion with Director Paul.
Yes.
So we'll end on an upbeat one.
Oh, good.
Just 1 minute, Stephanie, and having
Sure.
technical difficulties.
Wow, it's a pretty fancy playboard.
This is my colorful presentation too.
Have that number in my packet.
While you're waiting, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Is it a new game board this year, or if you played last year, is it the same question?
No, we always have new ones.
Oh, good, okay.
It's a very different game board.
All right, well, here it is. So Summer Splash starting July 1st. And that, Kate, is what your game board looks like this year. So the Summer Splash number 6 runs July 1st to July 31st. The theme is to keep the river flowing. And it has a new game board designed by professional illustrator Aldo Crusher. And the background is a river and people enjoying it. And then anyway, the graphics are just really, really great. Next. You can win fabulous prizes. These are the prizes. 2 high-efficiency clothes washers, a high-efficiency dishwasher, 4 iPads, a $200 gift certificate to a local nursery, 2 family passes to the aquarium, 10 $100 Visa gift cards, 1 Monterey Zoo family ticket, and 4 Cinemark movie gift cards. You have to be 18 to play, but it is family oriented, and these prizes are also family oriented prizes. We're hoping people get together and go through the different educational videos and then enter to win. And parent has to enter for their child, but we certainly hope that we get a lot of children participating. And next. The game board is slated to be in the Weekly, the Pinecone, Monterey Bay Parent Magazine, and the district's newsletter. And obviously it will be on our MontereyWaterInfo.org website. We are also planning to push the materials to the aquarium and the, actually it's not just Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, but the school districts for inclusion in their newsletters. And we will be doing that in the next week or so. So if you want to play, visit MontereyWaterInfo.org. You get to watch 3 educational videos and then answer 12 questions. And then you're entered into the drawing for a chance to win one of the prizes. Winners will be announced in mid-August, and we plan to have a follow-up advertisement to recognize the winners. And that is the conclusion of the presentation.
Questions from the board? I have one. I don't know how many people actually submit and become eligible for a drawing, but it's kind of a raffle at one point, isn't it? Is at some point they're eligible, but then what's the sequence? How do you pick a winner?
Well, I'm not the one who picks it, so I don't know that I know exactly all the details. Last year we had last year and the year before we had over 400 entrants. Okay. When you have a complete application, I think you just go into a drawing, and it's like you pick the first person and they get to choose which of the different prizes they prefer.
Well, do all 12 have to be answered correctly?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
My question was, I think we probably need to have legal take a look at how the game is played and how winners are picked. But I'm serious, right? And so then my next question was, can we probably push this out to the city clerks, and ask them to put it on their website?
Absolutely.
I'd love
because everybody don't take the Weekly.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Yes, I will pass that on. I will delegate that.
That was a good question, actually, about how do you pick the winners, because
I do believe that there is, sorry.
Let me finish. If one of the prizes is a dishwasher and one is a tickets to the Cinemark, who gets which one? I mean, how do you do that? How do you figure out who's on the top gets
Well, not
first choice, whatever it is, however it is.
So there is a lengthy official rules on the website, and I have not read that for a couple of years, but I think it covers everything. It's, as you can say, the small print. So
yeah. I would just jump in there, Chair. It's worked out, but now that the question is out there, right?
Yeah.
Now we're talking about, well, where is it at? Is it upstairs in the closet somewhere that someone's picked? It's been so long since we started this. It may be time to reestablish the fairness of it. That's all I'm getting to. Not that you guys have not been, but now it's out in the ether about we're not sure how it works. So
Yeah, well, you just said you've got entirely the wrong people in the room presenting to you. So we'll track this down. Yeah.
We'll work together and I'll make sure that we're doing everything appropriately and maybe even provide a written update for next month.
Okay.
There's been no relative of any director who's ever won.
no, that's clear in the official rules too. And this is a joint Cal-Am district project.
Okay, there's a handout. Let's go out to public comment on this, Melody.
Melody, when you're ready.
Hi. Yeah, I can't say that I've read the questions, so my question might not be worth pursuing, but it just strikes me as maybe you could do another version of this. This is more of a fun summer one, But the knowledge of our water supply and everything about it is so limited in the general public that it might be fun to do one that's more like, what do you know about where your water comes from? That kind of, with a different theme that is basically meant to educate people as to the current state of our water. Because boy, I run into some amazing misunderstandings out there on Nextdoor and Facebook and all over the place. Anyway, good work. So because you're not going to do 18, I just wanted to say what we, Mike DeLappa, Landwatch, and I put our heads together and put out a lot of information to people to try to get them to write comments or to speak at the meeting last week. And, I think between the two of us, we probably contacted about 3,500 people about 5 times, and we still only got 14 comments in person, but we will keep trying. And the comments were good. In fact, one of the Landwatch board members spoke. I couldn't speak, obviously. And Monterey Bay Waterkeepers and Brian McCarthy from AMBAG spoke. I don't remember if he said he was speaking as an individual. Probably was, but he did mention AMBAG. So all of the 14 comments were opposing the proposed decision, and they were good comments. They were knowledgeable, most of them. So I hope it took, so that was about 15 minutes worth of their time listening to all that, and I hope it made an impact. In doing that, I was a little puzzled. Normally in a situation where so much is at stake for a community, the community's leaders would be allowed to speak for the community, like Supervisor Daniels or Mayor Oglesby or Mayor Williamson. And because they're all on boards that are parties, they can't, I guess. I guess I'd like some clarification when your legal has a chance to comment on that, because it seems a little odd that all of our leadership is muted. None of them can speak on this issue at the CPUC, and yet it massively impacts the community they lead. So I just wondered if there was a way around that. Anyway, a thought there. It's not over. I don't know if they'll vote on it in 2 weeks. Maybe they will. And maybe they won't. I really don't know yet. But we have been doing everything we can think of to get the public alerted. And Dave Small's article, which I think I sent to everyone, was great. And he even gave the links to comment. And there might have been 1 or 2 people whose names I didn't recognize. But
Good, thank you, Melody.
so I just wanted to follow up on that. Thanks.
Well, just my quick reaction here with, I don't think we're going to change anything for this year's program. It's possible, I think next year it might be a way to focus the questions to see what is it that the community, maybe we think, less about, then we can maybe educate them in some fashion. That might be worth doing. The other question is about the legal standing of representatives of other agencies representing other agencies and being restricted in their public comment and so on. I think that's going to be beyond us, because that's a whole different section of law and a section of responsibility when you take the oath in those different kind of offices and so on. So
To look
I don't
into
know,
it.
there may be some other questions or comments, but please add to it.
Oh, we'll have Michael look into that one.
Okay.
And I want to point out on the water supply discussion, we also participate in what's called the Water Awareness Committee, and we're woefully behind. It's not just a district issue. This is a variety of water and related entities in the county, but they have a little book that describes a lot of where does our water come from, how does it all work, and so forth. Really needs to be updated, and that's been sitting, I think, since Rachel's first baby, right? Yeah. But it's still on the to-do list. So, but that would be a source as well. And it's, an easy read, easier. It's oriented more towards children than adults, but.
Ralph, okay, no comments about.
Yeah, and that may be a good thing. There's nothing wrong with starting them early, understanding the water on the peninsula. and the challenges. I was just gonna say about the advocacy, it may be part of each group's strategy not to have their members speak, right? Because either way, you don't get around who you say you're not representing, right? You can say you're speaking as an individual, right? Okay, you could try that, but you are a board member of that agency. And then it goes into, are we speaking as a group or not? So I just throw that out there as information.
And I learned the hard way.
Say, this has come up before.
Yes.
But you knew.
Okay, well, I had my eyes set on 8 o'clock. We would be adjourning, but I don't know that, we didn't make that. But is there anything for the good of the order? Anything needs to be added at the last minute? I don't think so. Nothing from anybody. Being adjourned. Thank you, everyone.